up, guys? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This is season 6, episode 1, and this was a good premiere episode, a solid 8. Okay, I did miss Lisa. But I did. I'm not even gonna lie. I did, okay? But they kept bringing her up, so she was there in spirit, all right? But no, I had a good time watching this episode. I laughed so much, and that's what I really miss about Housewives is how some franchises used to make me laugh, and I just enjoy the fact that Salt Lake City makes me laugh, okay? The nonsensicalness, the desperation, the chaoticness, I enjoyed, all right? So let's get into this video. Know sometimes before we get in to the review, we get a little spicy, just a little bit. And I just got a few things I want to talk to you guys about. So first up, I did do a standalone spicy corner. It is on the channel. I'll put the thumbnail on the screen, and y'all already know the link will be in the description box below if you are interested in it. And I think I only have one other thing I want to discuss with you guys right now because I just saw it, but I saw it on She Is Speaking with Emily Hanks's Instagram, and I thought it was interesting, and it pertains to this episode. So y'all know in this episode, Whitney is talking about how she failed at her business, okay? It was bad. She had to let go 30 employees. Well, it seems like she got her business back and things are on the up and up. So let's get into what she posted. So this is coming from She Speaks with Emily Hanks's Instagram, and it says this: Wild Rose Beauty with a post-premiere update. So it says, this big news for Wild Rose Beauty. Founder Whitney Rose has officially reclaimed full ownership of Wild Rose Beauty. It is back on being fully independent and guided by her original vision. Under Whitney's renewed leadership, the brand is going back to the roots with a deeper commitment to clean, cruelty-free skincare powered by high-performance botanicals. Expect refreshed favorites products plus exclusive new formulas that reflect Whitney's passion for beauty with promise. Stay tuned for upcoming product drops, promos, and behind-the-scenes sneak peeks into how Wild Rose Beauty is being reimagined. So, you win some, you lose some, and sometimes you come back even harder. So even though Whitney works my nerves, this is a big deal for her. So congrats for her, all right? So let's get into this review. So, like I said in the intro, Lisa was with us in spirit, okay? Because they would not stop talking about that lady. On top of that, I like Lisa. Here's the thing, and I've said this before. If you've watched my reviews for last season, I'll put the link to the playlist in the description box below. I've never really had a favorite on Salt Lake City. Like, I did watch season 1. Season 2, I tapped out of. I thought season 3 is when the racist lady was on there, but everyone has told me it was season 2, and I couldn't take her. She was getting on my nerves. I was just like, ugh, I couldn't do her. Season 3, I wasn't really watching. Like, I saw clips, but I wasn't engaged. Season 4, I saw the mid-season trailer. And I saw the mid-season trailer for season 4, and I was like, what is going down on that cast trip? The way that everyone was like bewildered, and it was like, I was like, it's giving soap opera. I need to understand the issues. So I actually went back and watched all of the episodes on Peacock leading up to that episode, and then watched the reunion and all of that stuff. Season 5, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna lock in. So I reviewed it and really enjoyed it and walked away from that season liking Mary, Angie, and Lisa the most. So I was really kind of dang, Lisa really not here? Like, I was waiting for the lady to jump out the bushes or something on the campsite. So I was just like, my God, today. But what's crazy is they mentioned Lisa's name the most out of the entire cast. And shouts out to this Twitter page by the name of Sutton's Roller. And it says this: they talked more about Lisa than anyone else, LOL, hashtag RHOSLC. And there's a picture where it says, despite not being in the episode, Lisa's name was said 43 times throughout the season 6 premiere, an average of once every minute and 13 seconds. The ladies would not shut up about that lady. And then they also did the numbers of how many times the other ladies' names were mentioned. So Brittany's name was mentioned 23 times, Mary's name 22 times, Bronwyn's name 17 times, Meredith's 16 times, Whitney's 15, Angie's 14, and Heather had the least with 10 times. So, girl, she was there with us in spirit, like I said. All right, y'all. So let's get into this episode. So it opens up and we have a Mary narrating, which I was surprised to hear Mary's voice instead of Heather because I've become accustomed to it. But I like the change. So you have Mary narrating how the season is technically supposed to go in a sense. And then we, like, as she's talking, we see the photos and these pictures and videos of the ladies down at the campsite that we see in this episode, having a good time, laughing, dancing, and all this stuff. And then the screen goes black. Then we see like 5 or 6 different fights happening. So you have Whitney, who I think is yelling at Lisa, where she was like, "We did not pile on to you," or something like that. Then you have Angie arguing with Lisa, where she was like, "You're not going to attack my business and my integrity." Then you have Heather, I think, yelling at Lisa again, saying, "Don't try to gaslight me," and she's dressed up as one of the forefathers. And then you have Meredith yelling at someone. I'm assuming it's Brittany or maybe Whitney. Then you have Mary saying, "Then what are we here for on the cash trip when they're in Greece?" She was like, "If none of us are friends and we all are feeling the same way about each other." And I said, "Ooh, that's gonna be a mess. It's gonna be a mess." And then it ends with the girls freaking out when they all go looking for Molly's, I think it's Swanson or Susan, whatever that lady last name is. But I was like, okay, it's giving Lifetime. Okay. Like I was legit waiting for like somebody to be like dead and them having to figure out who the killer is. But I said, this is what we get when it comes to Salt Lake City, the dramatics, the antics. So let's get into the episode. So the episode actually officially opens up and we see Angie driving an RV pulling up to Mary's house. She opens up the RV to welcome Mary and her housekeeper because the lady is also carrying Mary's bag. Mind you, neither Angie or Mary were dressed for going camping. Like Angie looked like she was about to do a stint in the office, like a good like 8 to 4 work day. And I said, "Girl, where you going?" And even Mary was like, "Why do you look like you going to the office?" And Mary to me wasn't giving camping. It was giving like Aspen ski trip. Like she's not going to get on the slopes, but she's definitely going to take pictures with the snow behind her. But she is going to be in the ski lodge, drinking her hot cocoa, eating some good food, and just, taking in the ambiance of the snow in a warm shelter. So I said, neither one of y'all are built for camping right about now. So she's like, okay. Like Mary, because Mary, I don't think understood the gist of the entire trip because her, like the things that she was saying throughout this little segment, I was like, did you know this is what she was coming up with? Or are you just saying, yeah, just sign my name to it? Because later on in the episode, Mary was like, this is not my trip. This is not my trip. So Mary gets on the bus. They're naming it Angie and Mary's Class A Getaway. They end up meeting the actual driver of the RV who's going to drive the ladies an hour to where they're going. I think it's Provost Canyon. His name is Teagues. And so Angie's going to drive for the first half of the trip. Mary was me. Because Mary was like, "You driving?" And Angie was like, "Of course." And Mary was like, "Oh, Lord." Okay. So we find out that Angie, I think this is actually Angie's RV because the pictures that they show us, it looks like her RV. So pretty much, Sean convinced Angie to buy an RV so that they could go camping with their daughter. And she was like, ever since her and her daughter and Sean went camping, it's been something that has been a lot of fun for them. So she wanted to give the ladies an experience that they've never had before. So Mary's whole thing is she's not really into this. Okay. She's like, she would go camping with her grandmother and all the things like that. But she's just like, that's when I was a child. As an adult, I don't want to do this. Being trapped in an RV with all these women, being so close to each other, hearing each other's thoughts, that's not something I really want to get into. And I'm with Mary. Okay. I much rather would have been like in a like cabin are going glamping. Now, I've been on cabin trips and they've been fun for the most part, but it's not like something that like I would rush to go do. But I definitely know I would rather be in a cabin than sleeping in an RV, because the RV did not look big enough for all of those women. It looked just the right size for at least like five, but specifically like four people. So I was just like, yeah, this wouldn't have been my speed. I'd have been irritated. Okay. So Angie brings up how, some of the relationships in New York were fractured, and they give us a full montage of the ladies arguing back and forth, yelling, Andy being like, y'all all can't talk at once. Everybody like, and just everyone yelling. And so she was like, maybe this will give us an opportunity to like start the mending process of those relationships. So the scene switches and we see the rest of the ladies minus Lisa in front of Heather's beauty lab, and they're all like excited and like trying to figure out where they're going. They actually flash across the screen the invitation that I'm guessing only Angie sent out, because I don't think Mary was that involved in this, but it says Class A getaway, bring bikinis, boots, and blessings. And there's a private jet. It looks like it's on the lake or on a beach. It's like on a boardwalk. You see like a martini glass. You see a bikini, a snorkeling mask, and I don't know what they call that little breathing apparatus, but it's like it's gearing you up to think that you might be going on like a tropical or a lake getaway. So the women are like, hey, like, does anybody know where we're going? Whitney says, look, I contacted Mary, but Mary wouldn't give me no tea. Heather says the same thing, that she called Angie, but Angie was very tight-lipped about it. And then Whitney ends up asking Meredith. She was like, well, did you talk to Mary? And she was like, yeah, I talked to Mary, but Mary didn't give me no tea either. So while they're standing there, someone ends up saying like, where is Lisa? Meredith lets it be known Lisa's not coming. And you hear Bronwyn say, wow. And then you see Whitney's face. Whitney looks stuck like, what you mean? And to me, Whitney has always been the Ashley Darby of this show. Somebody that likes to poke and dig up information on people, but if you do the same thing to her, it's a problem. As well as they both have had the same storylines for several seasons on their respective franchises. Ashley divorcing that pasty wet demon of a man, and Whitney with her failed businesses and her religious trauma. But they're always demanding transparency from somebody on the cast, even though they're not as transparent with the stuff that they give us. They give us like surface level information, like the salacious stuff, but they don't really give us like the real like nitty gritty about their life, but they want it from somebody else. Because Ashley did that to Robin, then she transitioned to Karen, and then she started to do it to Candace. And she also did it to Monique. Then you have it with Whitney, where at first it was about Jen Shaw, then it switched to Meredith, then it went to Mary, then Lisa, and then sometimes she does it to Heather, but now her like main target is either Lisa or Meredith, but really Lisa. Because that look was very much like, dang, I had already planned to like bring up the lawsuits, and she not here for me to start an argument with her. I see you, Whitney. I see you, okay? So while they're standing there, Heather says, now would be a good time to tell you guys where everyone like stands with people in the group. So she's like, Meredith can't stand Brittany, but I don't think the whole cast can stand Brittany. I think they tolerate her, but they find her to be utterly annoying. Then she ends up saying that she's not really a big fan of Bronwyn. Then you have Mary, where she was like, honestly, I don't really know where Mary stands with anybody. I think Mary's good with Angie and Meredith. The rest of the ladies, it's like hit or miss with them. Then you have Bronwyn, Whitney, and Angie, who are not in a good place with Lisa right now. And that's really the group. And Heather says, we got 5 situations going on, but this is kind of tame for our group. You would be wondering why we're going on a girls trip, but this right here is nothing. So while they're standing in front of the store, I think it was Brittany who saw the RV pull up first, and she was like, what the hell? What the hell? Then you see Bronwyn say, oh my God, Angie is driving the RV. And she was like, look at Mary, because Mary was like waving to them. And everyone's like, what are we doing? So then Angie opens up the door and she's like, welcome ladies to your Class A getaway. And everyone's like, bitch, what? Brittany opens up her jacket and she's like, girl, I thought we were going like to the beach, to a lake. I got on a bikini, and she shows that she has on a bikini. And then you have Angie in her confessional saying, bless Brittany's little heart. She took everything so literal. But I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I know Brittany is annoying, but in this regard, she's not wrong for assuming that they were going to like a lake or a beach or somewhere like tropical or like very warm, because on the invitation, it says bring bikinis, boots, and blessings. Like, and she was like, so why am I the only one in a bikini? And I'm with Brittany. Like, girl, I would have assumed that's where we're going. Somewhere hot, not cold with snow. And so Heather is like, girl, you really took the theme to heart. And she's like, yeah. And so Heather's in her confessional being like, I don't know where Brittany is going, maybe going to a pool party with a congressman, but this not it. So they all get on the RV. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then you have Bronwyn lying, saying, I live my life as a germaphobe. What are you talking about? Because that is such a, girl, there was piles of dog doo-doo throughout your entire house, ma'am. The way that dog was all up in Heather's face when she came to your house so y'all could hash things out before you took the group on a trip. Was it to Palm Springs? I think it was Palm Springs for you and Todd's anniversary. Girl, your house is nasty. It was pee and poop everywhere. What germaphobe are you? like Bronwyn. I see y'all gonna listen to me, because as much as y'all was trying to get on me last season when I was reviewing season 5 saying, oh, Leah, you too harsh on Bronwyn, I told y'all about Bronwyn and I told y'all about Katie. Y'all need to listen to me, because I be knowing. So, we're still in the confessional with Bronwyn. Bronwyn is talking about, if I would have known that we were going to be stuck in this RV together, sharing all this air and being this close together, I would have made like a chic hazmat suit. And I'm like, girl, you have your nerve to say you don't really want to be sharing air, or you're concerned about sharing the air with these women, yet you don't mind sharing piss and doggy doo-doo air at your house. And mind you, the scenes that they showed us last season, some of the piles of dog poop that they showed us was dry, which means it's been sitting there for like a day or two. And you complaining about sitting in a clean RV, girl, shut up. Like, girl, the nerve of her. Okay, so they're all like, oh, this is cute. Then we see Whitney being like, oh my gosh, there's somebody getting close to the RV. And it's these men in fake like SWAT outfits. We find out that they're strippers. I assume that they were strippers or just some people that Whitney got to like prank the like group. I didn't like, because I was just like, first of all, the SWAT on the back of the jacket gave fake. Like they got it at a, like, Spirit or like, a Walmart, very much Halloween attire. I was like, it's not giving what happened with Jen Shah, because you have Heather in her confessional saying, girl, this is giving me PTSD. And then they flash back when the NYPD pulled up on them that one season. But I'm like, girl, it would be a bunch of people here if they were coming to get one person. And the fact that the guy, when they asked for Whitney, because Heather gets out the car and she was like, who are y'all here for? And they're like, Whitney. Heather immediately was like, Whitney, get up out of here. Okay, right now. Like, she was not protecting her cousin. She said, girl, if they want you, you can go. But they just handcuff her and was like, you've been a bad girl. But they didn't read her Miranda rights. They didn't ask her they were just like, you've been a bad girl. And I said, girl, what is this? So the men get on, like, Whitney's like, come on, y'all. And they get on the RV. We find out that Whitney had texted them while they were standing outside of the beauty lab to let them know that the RV was there so that they could come and have a good time. I was with Mary. She was like, no. Because I don't mind a stripper here or there. But, like, if you're going to be stripping, where the muscles? Where the black men? Okay, the Hispanics, slide an Asian man up in there or something. If he gonna be white, give a little spicy white. Where the tan skin? Where the, like, none of that. I said, girl, I was like, I am not attracted to nobody. Nobody is revving me up. I said, girl, this ain't it. This is not it. So I was with Mary. Angie was like, I like strippers, but I like strippers that are close in age with me, not strippers that give that I could like throw them over my shoulder and like birth them. It's kind of weird. Just a little weird. But pretty much Whitney said she wanted to do a prank to start off the trip, because she was like, once I knew we were going on a girls trip, she was like, I could not prank the group, So I was just like, yeah, girl, this ain't it. So they're sitting on, the Sprinter. I think it's Tegan starts to drive this, not the Sprinter, starts to drive the RV, and they're all like cheersing and toasting to like a start of the trip. So they're all asking Angie, like, girl, where are we going? Like, where we're going? And she was like, well, we're driving an hour away. And she was like, I think Heather was like, is it north, south, east, west? Like, which way are we going? And I think she ended up saying south. Brittany ends up saying like, oh, we're going like past my house. Mary says, well, then we could just drop you off. And Brittany was like, oh. Oh, and then she was like, but Mary's like, oh, I'm playing. But in her confessional, Mary's like, some people just get on my nerves. And Brittany is one of them. And Brittany is annoying, but she is annoying enough where I don't like hate it. Like, the desperation is enough where I'm just like, I get a good laugh out of this. But I can understand why the women find her to be annoying. So while they're sitting on the Sprinter, I think Angie ends up saying, let's talk, y'all. We have an hour. We can talk about anything and everything. So then Heather was like, well, why don't we talk about Lisa? She's like, so where is Lisa? So then Angie ends up saying, well, I'm not very clear where she is. She was just like, she says she has some work thing. So then they show us a flashback when it was like 5 days earlier where Lisa was like, she don't really want to go on no trip with Bronwyn. She was like, I don't want to go on a trip with Bronwyn. She also was like, she's a pathological liar. And she was like, she can't tell the truth to save her life. And she was like, I also have a lot of things going on in my life. She was like, sometimes I don't think people know how much I work and how much I'm dealing with. I said, Lisa. She was like, I'm going to be with Blake and Ben, I have a full life. And then she explains who they are, Ben Affleck and Blake Lively. And I said, Lisa, okay. That's why I'm kind of thinking that maybe it was like some Sundance thing, because we do know Lisa throws Sundance parties or in events. So I was like, maybe it's something like that. But she was like, yeah. She was like, I'd rather be with them to be with Bronwyn. Like, you have fun. And she even tells Angie, I'm going to be with Ben Affleck and you're going to be with Bronwyn. Have a nice time. The conversation continues with Heather basically saying it's not like Lisa not to come to these types of things. And Mary co-signs saying like, yeah, it really isn't like her not to come to these things. Angie reiterates that she was like, she told me it was a work trip, and also she wasn't too happy to be around Bronwyn. Everybody looks at Bronwyn, and Bronwyn was like, girl, don't blame me for this. So then Whitney was like, she really gave up going on a girls trip to go do work, like Lisa really works. And so I'm looking at Whitney like, girl, I know you're not talking about Lisa gets a brand deal Barlow. Lisa, who's working with Wendy's. Like, I just saw her doing, like, I guess Wendy's promotion at some event, or maybe shooting another commercial with Alexia and Marisol. I'm just like, what are you talking about, Whitney? At least her businesses aren't failing like yours. Like, I'm confused. So then Brittany was like, no, she really does have a work trip. I spoke to her. And then she's like, you're one to talk, Whitney. Your business is getting dragged through the mud right about now. She gagged the mess out of Whitney. Whitney was like, are you kidding me? I said, ooh, 0.1 for Brittany. So Brittany's in her confessional basically saying that Whitney is emboldened and empowered to like speak poorly about Lisa because she's not here. And also she believes that no one's going to stick up for Lisa, but I'm going to stick up for Lisa. And so Whitney's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? She was like, and I was not speaking badly about Lisa. I was asking where she was. No, girl, you was trying to be shady and she clocked you. You just really wasn't ready for her to gag you with that. So then Whitney ends up asking, she was like, you don't want to go there with me, Brittany. She's like, you don't want to drag anything with me right now? Because, girl, let me ask you this. What do you do for work? And Brittany couldn't answer fast enough. And Whitney was like, sucking dick. Whitney was gagged. I said, well, they're one for one. They're one for one. Because she was like, I said, ooh. And the driver, he's giggling as he's driving the RV. And so they're arguing back and forth, yelling at each other. And then Whitney is like, I'm going through rock bottom in the public eye, and I'm going to climb my way back up, bitch. I said, oh my gosh. Heather's trying to tell Whitney to calm down. And then, what's it called? Brittany brings up, like, girl, you are dragging her. You are speaking negatively about Lisa, and you're only doing it because she's not here. So then Bronwyn irritated the hell out of me when Brittany was, like, talking with her hands, and Bronwyn was like, keep your hands out of my face or I'm going to jump in it. Shut up, Bronwyn. No one cares. Stay in the corner. Smelling like dog doo-doo. Be quiet. Okay, because I'm like, the girl wasn't even like, because I watched back the scene twice, and I was like, was Brittany doing all of this? No, her hands were like here, like she like had her hands close to her, and I'm like, girl, if anything, maybe when the driver hit like a bump, maybe a hand went that way, but you know she's not attacking you, and you know she's not doing it in an aggressive manner. So why are you threatening to jump into a fight that does not concern you? And then you wonder why when Brittany get mad and wraps you up, because that's the thing that Bronwyn doesn't like, is that when Brittany clocked her tea at the Harley Davidson museum, she has never liked Brittany since then. Because Brittany will tell Bronwyn about herself. And I'm like, yeah, girl, stop jumping into fights. Hush. Hush. So then Heather's in her confessional saying, like, when did Lisa and Brittany become friends? And they were like, somebody should ask Lisa that. Production being funny goes to Lisa's confessional, and they're like, Lisa on a business trip. So then Brittany says in her confessional, Lisa's like a sister to me. I said, girl, no, she's not. Lisa would not claim that. Brittany be setting herself up for failure. She was like, after Ports of Arda, she said they got really close, and they've been close ever since. So she was like, my relationship with Lisa is not affected by, her relationship with Meredith. But she was like, yeah, Lisa is my friend. And she was like, I'm going to have her back. So then Heather ends up saying, Brittany, don't say anything badly about her business. Don't kick a dog, like a one-legged dog, when it's down. But my thing about it is, then Whitney needs to shut up, because if y'all don't want Brittany to talk negatively about her business, then she shouldn't be gleefully trying to say that this lady doesn't work and she doesn't really have a business of anything. So then the tension kind of gets broken up, because when the guy cuts a turn in the RV, like a bunch of stuff starts falling, and he even makes the face where he's like, my bad, y'all, and he keeps going. And I said, see, that's why I'm not getting no RV. I need you to have a CDL license, okay? That's a big, big vehicle. So they pull up to the campgrounds, and everyone's like, girl, where are we? And it's looking a little dusty. They're like, is this the campsite? Like, what is this? And they were like, it's a bus over here, a broken down bus. There's trash cans everywhere. Like, girl, where do you have us? And then Angie's like, well, I never came up here. I just looked at pictures. And they're like, girl, what? She was like, I just looked at pictures on the website. So then you hear Meredith say, girl, this is a junkyard. Like, where do you have us? So Bron was in her confessional saying, girl, I pictured a glamorous cabin, and I'm with Bronwyn. I would have wanted to be in a luxurious cabin. She was like, with a private chef. And then, sometimes we would jump into like the jacuzzi with our bikinis and things of that nature, but that is not what we have. So they finally settle in, and they dock or park the RV, and everybody is like, is this where we're staying? And they are not happy. And you got Mary in the confessional saying, girl, we in the trenches. I don't like this. And they're like, where are we camping? Whitney isn't really bothered by this, because she was like, we used to go camping in my grandparents' Winnebago. So like, this is nothing. But she was like, when I think of Mary Cosby, this is not what I think of. I think of bougie. I think of white glove, like high-end service. Like I think of Dom Perignon. Like this is not what I think of when I think of Mary. And she was like, did Mary really plan this trip? Mary's in her confessional saying, do not put my name on this. Don't put my name on it. Okay? She was like, I don't want my name attached to this, because this is not me. Okay, this is not me. So then they're like, where are we sleeping? And that's when Angie is like, oh, we're sleeping in the RV. And they're just like, So okay. Next thing we have is the ladies having lunch, and they're sitting at the picnic table, and Brittany ends up like being like, look, I didn't get clearance from the hostesses, but I thought this would be a cool idea, since I'm known as like the recording girl. I thought it would be a fun activity for us to like record. And so she was like, I bought camera recorders, and everyone was kind of looking at her for a minute, but then Angie was like, oh no, I think that's a great idea. So, they flash back to when all of them cussed her out when they was in Mexico. When I tell you, they all wrapped Brittany up. They became a united front that day. They was in that car cussing that lady out. And so she passes all of them out to everybody, and they're all like, okay, this is cute. Like, I like this. So as they're sitting there, Everyone's eating very quietly, and Whitney was like, oh, I really like this is actually really kind of cool and sweet. And Heather's like, no, this is nice to be in nature. It gives you like a brand new perspective. And so that's when Andrew brings up about Lisa not joining the trip. And then we have Heather saying in her confessional, she was like, when you don't go on a girls trip when it's planned, you're pretty much sending a statement or making a statement that, like, you know what, you're not really into the group, like the group is into you. She was like, we would have probably tried to rearrange our schedules to make sure that, like, we could fit her in, like, and accommodate her. And so then Whitney ends up saying, well, she hasn't really shared anything with me by any means, but I've seen a lot of things online. And she's like, she's accused a lot of people of stuff, but there's some crazy accusations out there about her. And see, this is my thing with Whitney. You just got mad about what's her name, about Brittany bringing up stuff about your situation, yet you're doing the same thing with Lisa about bringing up stuff you saw online as well. So you can't be mad when people call you to the carpet. If you're going to bring up other people's stuff that's going on in the news and in the blogs, then they can bring up the stuff about you. So what's her name? Meredith ends up speaking up, and she was like, well, me and Heather talked to Lisa the other day, and she basically said most of those situations are pretty much handled. And so then in the confessional, Bronwyn was like, it's pretty interesting that Lisa is so busy, like, reading up stuff about everybody else. And it's mighty convenient that with all the stuff going on with her, in the press and all that stuff, she's not here and her schedule's maxed out. Mind you, I think all of them knew that Lisa was in the process of, like, negotiating her contract. And I talked about this in the spicy corner, so check it out. But I'm just like, maybe they thought she wasn't coming back because they dogged that lady out. Like, they was all talking about her except for Heather, Brittany, and Meredith. But the rest of them was really trying to get at Lisa. And I was just like, dang, I guess tell us how you really feel. So Bronwyn starts to talk where she's like, I've heard some things that most of that stuff isn't done yet. She was like, for somebody who's so worried about, like, my finances, your husband, your jewelry line, and has talked awful about all of us, it seems like, she has more out there than she's letting it be known as. So then you have, what's her name? Angie being like, Bronwyn, it seems like you want to say something, so just say it. Like, and then Heather's like, girl, spit it out. Just spit it out. So then Bronwyn was like, Lisa goes around saying all these accusations about everything, pointing fingers and pointing things out, but she's never really sharing the hard things that's going on with her life. And honestly, it just seems like there's a lot of effed up stuff and a lot of bullshit going on about hers. And so it is what it is. And everyone's kind of looking at Bronwyn like, oh, okay. And my thing about it is, Bronwyn, you got all this lip, but I don't want to hear nothing when Lisa calls you a gout dick sucker. Okay? Because this is my thing. Bronwyn is shaking that bob and she really getting at it and stuff, but I don't want to hear her crying or whining about anything when you are going in at this table and it's going to get back to Lisa. Okay? I don't want to hear a peep out of you, Miss Bob lady. Okay? So what's her name? Whitney ends up saying, yeah, she does talk a lot. And then even Mary chimes in and was like, yeah, it seems like she can talk about everybody, but, like, we're not allowed to talk about her because she's talked about me as well. So then Bronwyn brings up, like, I've seen at least 5 lawsuits, and they show the lawsuits on screen. And she's just like, I'm just saying it's a lot of stuff going on with her. You know what I'm saying? And she's like, I'm not wishing for, like, bad things to happen, but it is what it is. So then Mary, I think that's when Bronwyn says, there's some serious allegations with a lot of money and things of that nature. And so Heather is like, girl, have you been online Googling this lady? Like, Googling testimonials and things of that nature. And then Bronwyn was like, girl, it's in the Salt Lake Tribune. And they do flash across the screen a headline from the Salt Lake Tribune. And then she's like, I know you don't like me, Heather, and you're not going to agree with what I have to say. And Heather's like, no, I'm just saying I haven't seen what you have seen. So then Angie jumps in and she's like, Heather, it's everywhere. And in her confessional, she's like, I love Heather, but she's pretending right now because even Stevie Wonder has seen the things that we've seen about Lisa, so stop trying to play stupid right now. So Angie ends up saying, all the stuff that we're saying, I can say to Lisa's face. And so you have Heather being like, in her confessional, it's mighty convenient that Bronwyn is saying all of this stuff and Lisa's not here. She's like, I'm also kind of taken aback how the group seems to really be into like all this information about Lisa. She's like, I worked really hard on my relationship with Lisa and I don't want to do anything to ruin it. Like, everything in my body is telling me to like say something and defend Lisa, because I would want someone to stick up and defend me if this was me at the table. So then what's her name? Meredith speaks up and she's like, borrowing money is a part of business. And so, and everyone's like, yeah, but also you need to pay it back. And Meredith's like, no, that is true as well. So then Angie ends up saying, like, one might say the things that's going on with Lisa is similar to Jen Shah. So Whitney is gagged and Heather is like, girl, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about, Angie K? Like, what is coming out of your mouth right about now? So then you hear Angie say, that was a bad joke. That was a bad analogy. And then that's when Meredith says in her confessional, she was like, I'm not understanding this analogy that Angie is talking about. This is a civil case. Like, Lisa's not being, tried by the state of Utah or the United States government. These are not criminal charges. So then Heather is like, girl, what you're saying right now is blowing my mind. Like, it's blowing my mind that you're saying all of this stuff, that you're comparing Lisa to Jen Shah right about now. And she's like, it's also kind of weird that you two, and she's pointing to Bronwyn and Angie, are like bonding over this. And so then you know how Heather feels about Jen Shah. She like the boogeyman. Jen Shah is like Voldemort. You do not speak that man's name. Like Freddy Krueger. You don't say the person's name, or like Beetlejuice. And she is like, let's not talk about Jen Shah. Let's not wake up her spirit. She's in prison where she belongs. So then Bronwyn ends up saying, like, I'm not saying these things aren't true. And Heather's like, yes, you are saying these things are true. Like, girl, let's not try to like walk this stuff back. And like, she was like, well, you're saying all these things about Jen Shah, like, because Heather ends up saying she just compared her to Jen Shah. And then Bronwyn was like, well, what do you have to say about Lisa comparing me to Jen Shah online? And they show Lisa's tweets. I talked about that also in the spicy corner because Lisa addresses that as well. And so she was like, so she can say anything. So then Heather's like, girl, I don't be on Twitter Googling. That's a lie. That's a lie. Heather, you be in the know. You just trying to defend your friend right now. But you be in the know. You know what that lady be saying about her. So then that's when Bronwyn was like, Bronwyn says again, like, girl, I know you don't like me. And Heather's like, girl, my issue with you has nothing to do with Lisa. And the way I feel about you is something, like, it's something beside that. Like, let's not put all of this on Lisa. Like, let's not do that. Okay? And she's like, and also, girl, you're the same person. You're pointing all these things out about Lisa, but you got caught red-handed lying about that $4 million necklace that you did not buy. So they flash back to the reunion where Bronwyn is like, oh, I would have wore the necklace because Andy was like, that's one of the biggest purchases that we have ever seen on Housewives. And she was like, I would have wore it to like clear up some things. And Lisa's off to the other side saying, like, that's not what I heard. I heard she didn't buy it. So she was like, so then Heather is like, girl, this is giving very much like you're retaliating against her because Lisa busted you out about not really buying that. So then Bronwyn was like, you know what, that is my fault. I shouldn't have said what I said. She was like, I thought I was protecting the jeweler and myself. And she was like, what I said sounded like a lie. No, you blatantly lied, and you didn't do it just on the reunion stage. You did it on Watch What Happens Live after the reunion. So you did it twice, Bronwyn. You lied twice. Okay. So then Bronwyn says, I said I was going to buy the necklace, but I didn't buy the necklace. She then says in her confessional that, I wanted to make the girls believe that I did purchase it and be like, ooh, look at me. But honestly, I didn't buy it. She was like, I was going to buy another necklace where they wouldn't know the difference. I was like, girl, you were going to go to that extent? That extent is crazy. And so she's just like, I don't know why it was more important for, me to be liked by these women instead of like focusing on my anniversary with Todd and just being myself. But like, yeah, I did it and it was immature. And in the moment, I just wanted to be seen as cool. Now, I can give her credit for owning the fact that what she did was immature and she wanted to be like, she wanted to be seen as cool. Because you can tell that Bronwyn's self-esteem, especially when it comes to groups, like she wants to be liked by the group. But I will say, girl, when she said like what I said sounded like a lie, no, girl, you lied. Like I wanted her to say no, I lied to you guys. But this, I will give her credit for, to say like, yeah, I was being immature and I just wanted the girls to like me, because that's what it is. So then I think the conversation goes on where she was like, I should have cleared it up. And I didn't. But here I am clearing up my lies right about now. So then Heather ends up saying, has any of y'all been on a girls trip where the people are dogging you out? And then Mary says, I have. And Lisa was one of the people that was talking poorly about me, which is true. Which is true. Lisa was talking poorly about her. And then Angie says, Lisa has said something about all of us at this table. And then there's like a montage of Lisa talking poorly about almost everyone at the table. She was like, she always has information on everyone and their finances and everything. And then Angie is like, again, I can say whatever I'm saying to her face. And she was like, and then Bronwyn chimes in and she was like, I could do the same thing. She was like, I'm not going to say Lisa is a liar and I'm not going to say she owes these people money. But then Heather's like, but no, you're calling her a fraud, which is a little weird to me. And now all of a sudden, now you're trying to walk it back, because Angie ends up saying, well, I don't want these things to be happening to Lisa. I'm not happy for them, but it's given that you are. It's given that all of you guys are. Okay. That's what it's giving. And so Angie reiterates, I will definitely talk to her about it. And then Heather says, well, girl, don't tell me here for this conversation. And she takes a shot. Meredith speaks up and she pretty much says, let's deal with this information when Lisa is around instead of all y'all talking about it. Because she was like, I don't feel comfortable with y'all talking behind her back about this. And Bronwyn ends up saying, I'm not talking behind her back. I was like, yes, you are. You're trashing her right now. And then Mary was like, well, I don't really care. I mean, I'm good with or without her in the group. Whitney is like, I agree as well. So then Angie's like, let's pivot this conversation. No, Meredith says, let's pivot this conversation. So then you see Brittany wanting to make an announcement and everyone's like, oh God, girl. They all looking at her like, okay, Brittany. And so she was like, me and Jared got engaged. And so they were like, are you serious? And they showed the video of them where Jared's like, this one right here is about to change her last name. And then she flashes the ring in the camera. But then she said, but then 2 weeks later, we got unengaged. And everyone was like, girl, why are you telling us this? Like, why are you telling us this? And so now she's ex-fiancés. And so then Heather's in her confessional saying, I don't think Brittany understands what it means to make an announcement, because if something happens to invalidate the announcement, then it's not an announcement you should make. And I'm like, yeah, girl, like Brittany is delusional. So then they were like, well, why did you guys get why did you unengage yourselves? And Brittany says their kids weren't on board with it. They didn't like how they were on again, off again. So they decided to call it quits with that, but they're still together. And then Whitney makes a face like, girl, y'all still together? For real? So then Whitney said, well, I've seen him all the time at the gym and it's given very much he's single and mingling. He takes a lot of girls to the Lifetime Cafe. And so Heather's like, what does that mean, the Lifetime Cafe? They could just be hanging out. She was like, no, girl, it's more than hanging out. And she's like, also don't sleep on the chicken salad at the Lifetime Cafe. So I said, ooh, girl, not Jared still cheating on you. So the conversation switches again. And so Angie ends up saying, hey, we're going to have 2 activities, where she was just like, some of us are going to go fly fishing. She said the first time they went camping, they took Electra fly fishing and it was great. She caught her first fish. And then the rest of the women, if they want to, they can go kayaking. So Bronwyn, Heather, and Whitney go kayaking and the rest of the women go fly fishing. Whitney basically invites Bronwyn to Heather's dismay, and she's like, ugh, girl. But she was like, maybe this could be a bonding thing for you guys. So we see the girls get their gear on, and they meet up with the fishing guides and also the kayaking guides. We see the girls going kayaking. Whitney keeps hitting trees. I thought one of them was going to flip over. I've been kayaking. No, I've been canoeing. It was fun. My parents always bring up, specifically my mom, about how I was really no help with the paddling. But yeah, and I don't really like fishing. Like it's very boring. I would have been Meredith being like, girl, how long is this gonna take till I catch a fish? Mary had me weak calling that man Gusty when his name is Dusty. He was like, Dusty? She said Gusty. Dusty, Gusty. I don't know. Maybe she couldn't hear over the babbling brooks. Then she talked about resuscitating a fish by doing like CPR to like a specific song. I think it's How Deep Is Your Love is one of them. But like, I was with the man, girl. Once he's out of the water long enough, it suffocates to death. Like, Mary, what are you talking about? Throw it back in the water. Like, what do you mean? But she was like, no, he's lying. You can bring them back to life. I said, girl, no, you can't. You really can't. So, we end up seeing Heather with her cam, like her videotape, or her Heather cam, and she's talking to one of the locals that was there, and she's asking him about Molly Swartzen. It's this like legend of this fundamentalist Mormon who like escaped, I guess, polygamy, but she's on a mission to like punish like wayward girls who are like out like sinning, who like come to Provost Canyon to like kiss, make out, do other things, and they go missing. And I said, Heather, you always got some weird Mormon story to tell people. For someone who like wants to be considered a bad Mormon and like away from the faith, you sure do talk about it. Honestly, I believe that Heather would go back to being a Mormon if the rules weren't so archaic and if they treated people better, specifically women, because she always, every season, is telling us some like weird Mormon fact. Last season, it was about hot dogging and stuff like that. It's like she always got some story, but I mean, like, it's to be expected because she spent most of her childhood and adults being a Mormon. But it's just like, girl, you always got some weird fact. So it's nighttime now, and we actually see the ladies getting ready to like cook food by campfire, which I don't think is actually like, I don't think you should do that. Like, I can see a hot dog, but not an actual like you know, hamburger patty. I couldn't get jiggy with that. I would have been Mary. And you can tell that Angie did not plan for this. Like, she doesn't have condiments. Because the ladies were asking for like mustard and ketchup. She doesn't have like hot dog buns. They just have like wheat bread. She was just like, we should have bought a griddle, because Mary had like veggie patties, and she was just like, girl, I want to go. Mary tickled me though, because Heather brings up Molly Swanson, and because she ends up asking Bronwyn, like, when you were at BYU, did you hear crazy stories about like the creepy and scary things that happen in Provost Canyon? And Brom was like, yeah, I did. And she was like, well, have y'all heard about the story about Molly Swartzen or something ever, whatever? And they're like, girl, what is she? And she's like, basically, it's pretty much this lady who escaped like a polygamous group, who like, she's still out there. She kidnaps girls, young girls who have like wayward morals. Someone yells, but we're not young. And then Whitney's like, speak for yourself, you know? And so Mary said, I don't believe in Molly, because if Molly was real, she would have came and cooked this food. Because Mary didn't want to eat. Like, she was eating a dry bagel because she wanted to eat a veggie patty, but she was like, I don't think cooking it on the fire is going to work. She was just over it. And when Mary said, girl, if she would have came, if the ghost would have came out here and cooked this food, then it would have been real. But I don't believe in ghosts because she ain't cooked my food. I was tickled. That tickled me. So they're sitting there and they all start talking about how, like, I think Heather does a nice gesture to Bronwyn, or Bronwyn hands Heather like a hot dog, and she's like, look, we're getting along. And they're like, yeah. So then Angie brings up, don't you think this is fun? Like, y'all are having a natural fun time. And she was like, do y'all notice it's because Lisa's not here? So then Heather's like, girl, why would you say something like that? That's pretty effed up. And she was like, well, I'm just saying, like, do you think you could actually be yourself without Lisa being here? And Heather looks irritated. And she was like, I can be myself with or without Lisa. And she was like, she's like, yeah, I think me and her would have had a conversation. What we had on the kayak would have been the same thing. But like, my issues with Bronwyn are like different from Lisa. She reiterates what she said at the picnic table. So, and she was like, I also don't like how you're trying to jump into this, Angie, by insinuating that I wouldn't be the same without Lisa. So then Angie gets quiet. And then basically, I think Angie brings up how like some people weren't cool after New York. And then Whitney was like, well, yeah, I wasn't cool with her after New York. And I think this is where Heather ends up saying something to the effect of like, other than Bronwyn, who else isn't cool with Lisa? And that's when Whitney says, well, after New York, like she came at me online about like she tweeted something out. But then I like the fact that Meredith said, and you didn't do anything online first, because that's the thing. Whitney be doing things, especially on Instagram, being slick, but then when you respond to her, all of a sudden you've gone too far. So I'm like, yeah, what did you do? So then Whitney ends up saying I hadn't done anything, and then that's when Brittany says, well, that's a little hypocritical. And so then Brittany goes in about how she was like, what you said to me was so horrific, saying, do I suck dick for money? And like, I can't even say it. It's so crass. And so then everyone's like, is Brittany on the same like plane as us? Like what is going on? And so Heather's like, Brittany, like the timing, horrible, atrocious. And so then Whitney and Brittany start arguing back and forth. And that's when Whitney yells like, I didn't say that you suck dick for money. I like saying that that's what you really do. I just said, what do you do for money? Suck dick. And she's like, I'm sorry I said that. And then Brittany was like, you literally said, Brittany, you suck dick for money. And so they're going back and forth. And she was like, don't say it like I said it out of the blue. You came at me saying that I was trying to shade Lisa. And Brittany was like, you were trying to shade her. Like you were. And she was like, honestly, girl, that was like a new low. And like, I was really disappointed in you, Whitney. So then that's when Whitney was like, girl, Whitney says to Brittany, well, you came for my business and that was a new low. And I'm really disappointed in you, Brittany. Like I had a business that failed. Okay. She was like, Justin and I went all in our business and we got nothing out of it. She was like, we got into she was like, I'm not in legal trouble. I'm not in I don't have pending lawsuits like Lisa. Like I have people online, coming at my business, but honestly, ultimately it failed. I had to fire 30 employees to be exact. Like that was not something I wanted to do. So then in the confessionals, Whitney is talking about how like this is the first time I've ever done something and it takes so bad and I lost like millions of thousands of dollars. She was like, honestly, it's emotionally hard for me to like be here and talk about this right now because like I've never felt this bad. Honestly, I could have told y'all it wasn't gonna work. That business was gonna work. Whitney is not known for skincare and beauty. So I don't even know why she thought that was going to be hit. And even with her jewelry, when people found out that jewelry was from Alibaba or AliExpress, and it looked very basic and you were charging like $40 and $50 for it, of course your business was going to go down in the crapper. But Whitney talks about how like all of this really affects her. She said, I made like one bad choice and like it was messed up. And she was like, I don't appreciate my friends bringing that up. But yet you bring up other people's like failures and mistakes, Whitney. Like, what are you talking about? So then Brittany ends up saying, you know what? I'm sorry, Whitney. Like, I'm sorry. And then everyone else is kind of looking at her. And she was like, the stuff that I'm going through is not on the same level as Lisa. She reiterates that. And she was like, it's just a bunch of TikTokers trying to get famous off of my failure. And I was like, girl, some of them TikTokers been in the game long and they just saw the writing on the wall. But okay, I get what you're saying. And she was like, I'm in this friend. Like, I should be able to lean up on my friends, but not have them come at me. And she was like, and if Lisa would be open about her failures, maybe she would find camaraderie in this group. And I'm like, but y'all don't like her. That's the thing. Whitney does not like Lisa. So why does Whitney ever think that Lisa would confide in her and give her information about her life when you genuinely don't like her? You are taking pleasure in saying that she does not have a job and that she does not work. But you want her to tell y'all, like, yes, I'm going through these lawsuits. Do you know how stupid you sound? Okay. So then Whitney ends up saying like she needs to stop with the fake facade and things of that nature. So then Brittany was like, you know what, that's fair. And I'm really sorry, Whit. And so then you have Bronwyn and Heather basically saying that, nobody really talks about their failures, but failures are where you grow. Heather says, I had a lot of business failures before Beauty Lab really worked. So then Angie ends up saying, no, it takes a lot of courage to be an entrepreneur. And so then you see Brittany go and try to hug Whitney, and Whitney was like, I'm not there, Brittany. I'm not there. And I was okay with that. Because, yeah, girl, me and you just got into it. Don't come over here hugging me. Don't do that. And she was like, well, I'm really sorry. But she was like, but I also feel like I need an apology for you telling me that I suck dick. And everyone's like, Brittany. And Brittany was like, look, it's on the same page, girl. Like, she's like, I can be sympathetic, but also demand an apology. Like, one doesn't negate the other thing. Like, you said something shitty to me, and I think I deserve an apology. Then in her confessional, Brittany says that Whitney can say whatever she wants, but I mess up one time, and I'm supposed to fall on the sword for her and, like, fall at her knees and apologize. So then Angie's like, well, Brittany, you came in really hot. And you see her trying to open up. And then Brittany ends up saying, well, I'm clapping back and standing up for myself because last year it seems like y'all was walking all over me. So then Meredith jumps in and she's like, Brittany, we don't want to hear what you have to say. Okay. She was like, you came at somebody that was really kind and good to you. And Brittany was like, girl, you turned on me like a dime. And then they show when they, the whole recording situation. And that's when Meredith called her vile and like telling her, you need to leave. I've had enough of you. Like going off on her on the bus. And so they go back and forth and she ends up saying to Meredith, she's like, Meredith, we were good friends. And Meredith said, girl, we were not good friends, girl. How many times have we talked on the phone? And she was like 2 times, like twice. And she's like, so we've been good friends and we talked on the phone twice. And then Brittany was like, we also went and had dinner together and had a good time. And then everyone starts laughing. And she's like, don't laugh. Like, we really had a good time together. And she was just like, are you serious? So then Brittany says in her confessional, Meredith thinks I'm the weakest link, but I'm not. And she was like, and I'm tired of her trying to take out her latent aggression against me. Cause like, girl, I'm not the target and you don't want to like pretty much go there with me. We'll see. I wonder if Brittany can keep up with Meredith. I'd be really interested to see if she really gets at Meredith. I'm down because I'm not on either party side like that. Like I don't have a dog in this fight, but I'm interested to see them go off on each other. So then the conversation ends with Meredith basically telling Brittany, I have zero respect for you. And Heather's like, dang, Meredith, like that was harsh. And so Brittany's like, thanks. But I will say they do somewhat bully Brittany. Like nobody really likes her. And like they just tolerate her, but they do say pretty harsh things to her and expect her to get over it. But if she says something to them, they expect her to like bend the knee and like grovel. But I guess Brittany said, I'm not doing that no more. Y'all gonna get what y'all get. So when Heather decides, let's go looking for the ghost of Molly Swartzen. And everyone's like, girl, no, let's go lay down. Mary was like, it's time for bed, ain't it? And she's like, no, let's go do it. So then we actually see them going. I don't know how they got lost, but they all start freaking out and crying. And everyone's like, I want to leave. Meredith's talking about, I don't got no cell phone service. You have Brittany freaking out. Whitney yelling at Heather saying, you're the one that brought us out here. And I'm like, is production not with them? Because we have a scene of them where it's like a shot of the ladies like walking and they're walking in like this water puddle and then it phases back to when they're using their camera recorders. And I'm like, did production just leave them in the woods? I was so confused. I said, this has to be staged, but I was tickled by it. But that's how the episode ends. I definitely feel like this season is going to give us something. They always give us something. Last season was great. The reunion was but I'm hoping they deliver another great season. I did hear that this season somewhat tops last season, so I'm excited. But yeah, y'all, that is it. That is all. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in them comments below and subscribe. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.